Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're listening from, tuning in. Welcome to the Esports Industry Podcast, first ever episode, and we have here a special guest with us, Mr. Ivan Yo, the CEO and co-founder of EVOS Esports, the number one esports organization in Southeast Asia. Hi, Ivan, how are you?
Hello, Alan. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
It's
This
a
is actually my
pleasure to
first
be here.
podcast. Oh, sorry. This is my first podcast. I'm trying to minimize any errors. Noob 101 in the podcast, so please bear with me, Ivan.
It's okay, man. You gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah, just like you, how you started off EVOS. Maybe you could share a bit your background before joining EVOS.
Yeah, so I started my career after university in the finance industry. So started off as a trader, went into real estate, and eventually went down the entrepreneur route. So I think the first business I started was a Airbnb business in Japan. Went into F&B business in Cambodia. And while I was doing that, the opportunity came with my high school best friends. We talked about esports. We always had an interest for games, and we thought, why not start something together? And it's what started as a side hustle and a side hobby eventually turned out to what the EVOS that you know today.
Wow, that's really inspiring because sometimes I meet some people and they're not from esports industry and they share with me, hey, this EVOS Esports. And then they ask me, what's the background of the co-founders? And I share about yourself, Ivan, and they ask me like, huh, that's nothing to do with esports background. How did a person from your kind of background ended up there? So I believe passion also plays a part. Is it safe to say that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, without passion, halfway through you would have given up.
Hmm.
It's not like you're gonna make money on the first year of the company, right? It's
Right.
always a very long grind throughout the whole process. And even making the first dollar was so hard. So if you lack passion for even, and this is for any business, right? If you lack passion for it, the moment you hit that first roadblock, you're gonna give up.
Right. Because I believe in esports industry, it's still very new to many people, even to the brands or non-academic brands listening in. And some of them, like me myself, I used to come from a non-academic brand also, right, from the airline industry. And when looking at esports, there's so many different ways to look at it. And like some people say, wow, esports can make a lot of money, for example, right? And like you said, there are roadblocks and there's challenges along the way. And without passion, you can can give up like easily in that sense. And so like for when you started EVOS and right here now in 2020 already, what do you feel is like you could have changed or done it differently, or you wish you had known when you started your journey into the esports world, because you've been around like 3 4 years, for example. And was it uh I know you say it's not so easy, so could you share more about that?
Well, I guess, I mean, there's a lot of parts to that question. Obviously, along the way, there was like tons of roadblocks, and to be honest, I don't regret a single day of the entire journey. Like, looking back, every single obstacle that came my way allowed me to grow into the person and allowed the company to grow into what it is today. So
Right.
I think, I mean, obviously, on the way to where we got, on the journey to where we are right now, you're in a new industry, no one really knows what it is, and obviously when you talk about esports 2 3 years ago, people will be like, what? you know
Yeah.
what are you trying to do? Why are you wasting time? Why are you wasting money? That's not never going to work out. And I think that's something that, as entrepreneurs we have to learn, right? Like, no matter what you do, there will always be outside opinion telling you to, just give up and telling you that it's not going to work.
Mm.
So I would say, if I were to send a message to me back then, it is to, ignore the noise, focus on the facts, and trust that, um, over time you will grow into who you want to be in future and build the company that you want to be.
Right. I mean, like, for sure, like, even now, my mom, because of now the COVID-19 pandemic and all that, and EVOS is more sorry, esports is more prominently featured, and then my mom sees esports on BBC. Like, Alan, look, there's esports on BBC. Like, yes, mom, we know, I know, but to some people, it's a totally new thing. And imagine 3 years ago, even more challenges in that sense. Some people must have thought you guys are crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, back then when I talk about esports to my parents were like, "Yeah, you're just doing it for fun, right? It's just a hobby, just a vanity project."
Oh, okay.
But I mean, when you're starting out, it's best to just keep quiet and just work
Mm-hmm.
and let the results speak for itself, right?
Yeah.
So I think back then my parents didn't really understand the business. They thought that,
Hmm.
I mean, it's a joke, lah, right? To be honest,
Mm-hmm.
paying people to play a game in a gaming house.
Yeah, man.
In what way will you ever make money from that?
Right.
But we stuck to the vision, and eventually we paid out.
Right.
And the funny thing is, right now my parents are one of the biggest supporters for EVOS,
Mm-hmm.
and they are even a closet coach for
Oh.
our team right now.
Oh, wow. What is a closet coach?
So when you watch soccer,
Hmm.
and then when your team is losing, and then someone will say, "Hey, you should have done that. You should do this." Why the players like that?
Wow.
Yeah, essentially that's what my parents have become.
Wow. That's inspiring in a way. Closet coach. Okay, I learned something new. Wow. Then like when you started EVOS, right? What was your trigger point? Did you like get exposed to a certain esports match and like, oh, okay, I want to do this kind of thing?
Well, I mean, when I was in high school, I
Mm-hmm.
was a avid gamer,
Oh.
and back then, when you play games, you play it in like cyber cafes, and in the cyber cafes, you have clans, you have
Mm-hmm.
in-house tournaments, you have those kind of stuff. And I was also actively involved in it.
Oh, wow.
Back then, I wanted to be a pro player, so I joined a tournament. I think um, the first like tournament I joined was World Cyber Games
Oh, wow. That's
back
like a
in
legend.
back in 2004, I think.
2004.
And back then it was like Dota 1. And then I went on the first day, super nervous. Played the first game
Uh-huh.
and I lost on the first round.
Okay.
And then yeah, and that kind of kick-started the whole interest in gaming, right? Like
Right.
but of course back then I didn't see it as a business opportunity. Only when the first TI happened, the international Dota 2 international back in I think 2013 or 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw esports actually came to life.
Oh, wow.
The crowd, watching it live, feeling the hype. I think it got to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like uh, back then, I could see it eventually becoming big.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more about the timing. When do
Right.
you actually start that business? When will it actually be relevant?
Hmm.
What are the um, so-called catalysts for esports to grow?
Right.
I guess that was some of the things I was looking at, and it was only under 2016 that I saw it and
Hmm.
decided to go into it.
Yeah, I think that like you mentioned, timing is also important. Not many people realize like, wow, suddenly esports is booming, etc. But back then, 2012, maybe the infrastructure wasn't really set up properly in terms of Wi-Fi and your 3G, 4G, and I think that also like changed the whole landscape in a way,
Yeah,
connectivity.
yeah. So I mean, with regards to like any new trends, there's always catalysts that comes into play that
Hmm.
makes it into a trend, right? So,
Okay.
for example, soccer. Soccer became big only when radio was invented.
Ah.
Basketball only became big in the 1980s when live broadcasting became was invented.
Right.
And right now, esports became big when live streaming became a thing.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so everything has its catalyst, and
Mm-hmm.
when you see the catalyst happening, that's when you ask yourself like, okay, how do I position for this trend? What do I need to build to ride this trend?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thought process that was running through my mind when I started the company.
Right. Even back then, if I'm not wrong, around year 2010, 2012, not many big brands got involved with esports in a big way compared to what's happening today around the world. And I guess if you guys started off earlier, maybe it's too soon, like you say, timing, yeah. And nowadays you see a lot of esports teams, event organizers, etc. And when you started EVOS, right? I read your article. You went to organize a Dota league first. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, makes sense, right? You start a new company and then event
Hmm.
organization, it makes sense.
So that's interesting. Most event organizers they start off doing events and stay that track, but then y'all pivoted straight away from after a event, then straight away. Oh, okay, let's do a team, for example. That was a big
Yeah.
pivot, unheard of.
Yeah, so while we were doing events, you know, end of the day, we're trying to build a big business, right? We're not trying to
Mm,
build just an SME.
right.
And if we continue down that path, we knew
Mm-hmm.
that end of the day, we'll just be an event organizer. We'll
Mm,
just be a service provider. And the reason for that is because esports is not like um, UFC or NBA, you know, where you can't really own the ball or you can't really own the IP of fighting. Whereas for
right.
esports, there's always the IP holder, which is the game developers themselves. So if I were to make an event and it were to eventually become too big, you know, I run the risk of the developer coming to you and say, "Hey, I'm cutting your license or rights to ever creating an event around my game," and
Oh,
essentially that kind of screws you up, right?
right, right,
So I felt that starting teams, the business model is quite similar to that of uh, influencer management company.
mm,
The monetization model is also similar to influencer-driven model. So it's more clear-cut with regards to how to monetize. So we decided to take that route.
right,
And if that route, which is back then more of a lower risk move compared to event organizers, so we thought that okay, if we change to esports teams, build them big enough, eventually, if we do want to start an event organization company, we still can,
right,
because there's not much of a barrier to entry. It's not like owning a big IP in the event space gives you a strong enough moat to be, a monopoly or duopoly, right?
right. So when you started your first event, did you manage to get any sponsors back then?
Oh yeah, we did.
Oh, okay.
So I think the first one we got like Razer, and like when you just started, it's they give you free like mouse and keyboards.
Mm, okay.
The second season that we did, we actually got My Republic to sponsor
Oh, wow.
quite a fair amount. It's not too bad,
Oh, wow, y'all
but
did 2 seasons.
yeah, we did 2 seasons.
Wow. And then I
But
read your article. After that, you created a Dota team.
yeah, and then from there it's like okay, let's try doing teams instead. So from the leagues itself, we chose the best team within the league. So back then, I think the first and second place were really sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
So we took the third place team.
Oh, okay. Still okay. I think
Yeah,
that's a smart move. You started off with league, identified one of the top three teams, and chose one of them.
yeah,
Oh, that's a good
and
strategy. Sorry, go
and
ahead.
yeah, and also I think back then like the cost to entry was really low.
Hmm.
Right now we talk about pro players earning like huge sums of money. So if you were to start a team right now, it's gonna cost quite a fair bit. But back then, salaries were in the $100 a month. As a side hobby, it was still quite manageable lah.
Right. And then after that, when you started off doing teams and getting more involved with EVOS Esports, how was the journey to acquire sponsorships? I read some of your articles. You mentioned that quite transparent and quite open. Not many esports teams would say such stuff like you mentioned the amount. That's really that's really good in a way, so that you give a overall view of how was the industry back then when you first
Yeah.
started.
So I think when we first started, when we just started a team,
Hmm.
as I mentioned just now, we saw it as an influencer-driven model, right?
Right.
So right off the bat, we made sure that we invested in social media and in content to ensure that at least our social media metrics were up there, at least as comparable to your general influencers. So I think within like 2-3 months, I think we got to like 100,000 plus Facebook followers.
Wow.
So I mean, if you go deeper into it, back
Mm-hmm.
then it's also like arbitrage, right? So
Mm.
if you look at Facebook, the advertising, it's essentially the bidding market, right? So when no one's bidding for games or esports, and you actually go in and buy esports ads,
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely cheap to gain followers.
Oh,
So
okay.
like your cost per follower is like 0.01 cent.
Right.
Your cost per engagement is less than 1 cent, right? It's like point something cent. So back then it was really cheap to start off and build a brand from there. So we signed a team. Within less than 3 months, we got 100,000 followers, and that's when we got our first brand.
Mm.
I think it was a PC maker
Okay.
called Digital Alliance. So they sponsored us graphic cards,
Okay.
1080, 1050 Ti's,
Wow.
5 graphic cards.
Okay. That's a good
yeah,
start
so
somewhere.
so we were able to upgrade our players' PCs.
Right.
Yeah, and then once the first one comes in,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of ride momentum. Even if the value is small,
Mm-hmm.
we always focus on delivering utmost delight to the brands that we work with.
Wow.
So people talk about you, people say, "Oh, they're good, they're professional, they deliver value," and from there we kind of just pick it up, right? So Nvidia came in,
Mm-hmm.
with, I think back then it was like $500,
Oh,
and
okay.
we were super happy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
$500, and back then, doing a business around people playing games, that's quite exciting, lah. That's
Right.
probably the most exciting $500 I ever earned in my life.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, before that, you were fund management and dealing with probably millions, right? So
Yeah.
now it's like the other way around. You need to search for funds from a esports perspective. And then, like, when you start doing that, I mean, fast forward now in 2020, do you see that EVOS was like on this growth stage back in 2017 when you all first started with one Dota team?
Um, to be honest,
Mm.
if I say yes, it looks like I'm bragging, but
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, from the start, I've always had this vision to build, in phase one,
Mm-hmm.
the number one Southeast Asian esports organization, and I
Right.
also envision that when we enter phase two, we'll be building Southeast Asia's number one millennial entertainment
Right.
business,
Right.
sorry, company.
Right.
So I kind of had this roadmap plan in my mind, but at the start, it's not something that you share as well.
Right.
But since it's already done, why not, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like a big leap from where you all first started one team, and now you have like a lot of influencers and a lot of teams around the region. Could you share more about like how you all expanded after like in Indonesia, and then subsequently now you have a market presence in Southeast Asia?
Yeah. So I mean, as I mentioned just now, we knew that just being in one country alone will not be attractive enough in the event that we want to raise seed funding. You know, just owning teams and running teams in one country, that's not very attractive from an investor standpoint. So right off the bat, I knew that to stand out
Mm-hmm.
amongst the rest of esports organization, I had to be a regional company.
Ah.
So the moment we were relatively established in Indonesia, and I see ourselves capped in terms of our growth,
Mm-hmm.
and I merely started researching the other countries in the region.
Right.
So I think the first one that I looked at was Vietnam.
Mm.
So yeah,
I heard
so
Vietnam is like a religion there. Some of the games, I mean, people sharing with me stories like, oh, they treat like, for example, League of Legends like a religion there or something.
yeah, so to compare, right? When we
Mm.
were doing Dota 2 in Indonesia, the peak viewership back then, when it hit like 9,000 or 10,000, you're already like, wow, that's crazy.
Oh.
But when I chanced for in Vietnam and
Mm-hmm.
looked into it, the average viewers there was like 60,000 or more.
Wow.
And if when I studied the user base data,
Mm-hmm.
the active user data,
Right.
Vietnam was in top three in the world with regards to League of Legends player base.
Wow.
So with regards to like viewership and market size for the game itself, it made sense for us to explore the entry into the country.
Wow. Can you share more like right now, right? I mean, EVOS is really expanding, and one of the only few esports teams that manage to raise funds per se. Not, I mean, you hear a lot in the US, Europe, people raising funds left, right, center, and you guys are one of the few that did Series A. Um, how has the process been like? I mean, like, was it easy? Was it hard back then?
Mm, So I came from an investment background, so
Mm-hmm.
in a way I kind of understand how investors think as well.
Ah,
So I think at the start it's all self-funded. We built what we needed to build to get to at least a worthy seed investment. So the moment we were regional and esports started to pick up, that's where I shifted my focus to looking at fundraising,
right.
right? So uh, you can say it's a bit of luck. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the moment that I knew that we needed to fundraise, I went on LinkedIn, messaged a
Oh,
bunch of
oh
people,
wow.
cold
Okay.
call, tap onto networks, and kind of just like get feedback with regards to how investors perceive the industry,
Wow.
right? So I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't look at. They are kind of pigeonholed into their business
Hmm.
and not kind of get how outside people look at them. So when I was ready to fundraise, that's what I went to do. Talk to investors, talk to people, understand public's perception of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of mold a company to solve these issues.
Right. So like for EVOS, how do y'all like work with brands? Can you share some examples or some of your favorite activations in the past or even current?
Uh,
And
so
also,
I,
sorry, just asking also like how do certain brands perceive esports? You can mention, don't mention the names. What's the good stuff and what is the like confusing stuff they feel they're trying to
yeah.
wrap their head around? Because I myself have talked to some brands and mostly some are not sure what is even esports, right?
So I think for me, one of my most favorite campaign that I did
Hmm.
in the early days was with Gojek,
Oh, okay. Gojek.
right? So Gojek was our first ever non-endemic.
Right. Sorry, for those who are not sure, sorry, Ivan. Gojek
Yeah,
is a car transportation platform, something like a Uber per se in the US. So Gojek is very big in Indonesia, ride sharing platform, and they do a bunch of other stuff right now. Sorry, Ivan, go ahead.
yeah. So I think that was one of my favorite uh brand campaign activation. So back then we were doing Dota 2, right?
Mm.
And in Dota 2 you have the courier, the one that delivers items to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
one thing about esports team is that you don't really have much IP assets or digital assets, but what we do have is community voice.
Right.
So community engagement, community activation, people consume the content on our social media, etc., etc. So one thing we did was that we kind of memed the courier in Dota 2 as the Gojek delivery driver
Oh, okay.
delivering items to you, and we did a whole like brand campaign around that,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially became a meme within the Dota 2 community.
Oh, wow.
So when you watch all the streams in Indonesia, whenever the casters or the players see the courier coming, it's always like, oh, Gojek is coming, Gojek is coming. So I
Okay.
mean, I guess that I felt that was quite an interesting way to integrate brands within the game itself,
Mm-hmm.
without spending a ton of money paying the developer to get your own skin
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or whatever. So it's kind of something that we kind of
Mm-hmm.
adapted to our business, right? Like
Right.
obviously back then you have no access to Dota 2 as skins or that kind of stuff. So we kind of play around with it and trying to do our best for the brands that we work with.
Right. Yeah, I think it's very smart, low cost, high value, and high engagement in terms of the memes, right? Um,
Yeah,
I think like, of course, I used to travel around US, Europe. The Americans obviously the A word. We need to be authentic, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And after like Gojek, like how else do y'all help brands? Maybe you can share some of your experience and case studies.
Okay, I'll continue a bit from the Gojek one, and
Sure.
then I'll go to our current ones. So after Gojek, the Korea thing did well, and then came two new brands that came in.
Mm-hmm.
First one was Traveloka,
Traveloka,
uh,
is a travel platform.
yeah, something like Booking.com or Expedia in the West.
Okay.
And the third one was Tokopedia, so an e-commerce platform similar to Amazon.
Right.
So we did the same thing. For Tokopedia, I mean e-commerce, they're a shop. So we kind of memed it with the secret shop within Dota 2 where you can buy your
Oh.
items.
Okay.
So we kind of did a lot of graphics and we did a lot of like brand campaigns around that. you know, trying to integrate Tokopedia as a brand with the esports community.
Right.
So at least, when they see the game, when they see the brand, they think, oh, secret shop.
Oh, that's smart. Very low
Yeah.
hanging fruit approach, but
I mean,
impactful.
yeah. Back then, I
Hmm.
mean, we have limited resources, right? So
Yeah.
this is how stuff we did. And then for Traveloka, in the game itself, you have this item called Boots of Travel.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows you to travel around the map. So we kind of call it like Boots of Traveloka, and then we did a whole
Ah.
campaign around that. So that was like the early days, right? Where with limited resources, we try to do our best for the brands. Um, right now, it's a lot different. Our brand's reach and influence have grown quite a fair bit since the early times. Right now we have a network of influencers with a
Mm-hmm.
following of more than 70 million
Wow.
followers. Across this network, we do 350 million views.
Wow.
On our Instagram alone, we have more than 3 million.
Wow.
So our brand is quite strong within the countries that we operate in.
Mm-hmm.
So what we see right now with regards to brand activation is we're doing more image rights kind of deals whereby we're collabing with FMCG brands to create EVOS limited edition products. And the reason for that, aside
Mm-hmm.
from being able to deliver sales, is to deliver context to how we promote a particular product.
Okay,
You see,
interesting.
if you have a normal product and you ask us to promote it,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of falls in the realm of hard selling, right?
Okay, what do you mean by hard selling?
So it's like, um, this is the coffee brand. It's good for you. Buy
Okay,
it.
right, right, right. It's
Right,
like
that's hard selling.
right. It's like just putting a logo or just
Yeah,
holding a
product
cup there like that.
placement. Yeah. So I mean, our solution was to do a limited edition run. Collaboration product. So for example, let's say it's a
Mm-hmm.
coffee brand,
Mm-hmm.
EVOS X coffee brand limited edition product.
Mm-hmm.
You buy the coffee, you get like some bundled EVOS like souvenirs or something.
Oh,
So that gives us reason to promote it, right? It's like,
right.
hey, you know, support us, support our sponsor. They make us who we are today. Buy this limited edition coffee brand, and you'll
Uh-huh.
get um a bundled EVOS limited edition product.
Right. Oh, okay. Oh, I think limited edition is quite important in the esports gaming world per se, because this esports community they love stuff that is special to them, right? That's something I
Yeah,
noticed lah.
yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
yeah, and then most of the time it gets sold out. Like I've been following previously, EVOS have these hoodies and all that, and sometimes I want to buy one, and some of our friends like Matthew's like saying, "Oh, no more already, no more stock, sold out." Like certain certain designs, for example.
Yeah, I think end of the day it's very important to see things from the perspective of our consumers as well.
Right,
End of the day, we need to ask like, why do people buy our products?
right,
It's not just to support the brand, but
uh-huh,
sometimes they just want to feel special, right?
right.
So that's some of the stuff that we look at when we launch our merchandise.
Right. In general, right? I mean, you share a lot of great stuff on how you all do brand activations. What do you think some brands? I mean, I don't say names, but in general, like, do they approach esports wrongly, or any activation you see gone wrong per se? Any advice for brands out there?
Well, I think a lot of brands come in and kind
Hmm.
of just throw money at events or like just do like brand placements,
Mm-hmm.
like XXX tournament sponsored by
Mm-hmm.
XXX.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. Is
Mm-hmm.
we can't just look at it as if it's a normal sport whereby you
Mm.
sponsor an event, naming rights, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, like when we talk to brands, there are always three phases that we look at
Oh,
um,
okay.
when we try to incorporate or integrate a brand with our brand. So, three phases. First phase, of course, it's brand exposure.
Right.
Second phase, brand engagement. And then third phase, brand conversion. So in the first phase, it's to introduce the brand into the market, to announce that the brand is supporting
Mm.
the passion and interest of many millennials.
Right.
So that right off the bat, the fans see this brand as someone that supports and their passion, the thing that they love.
Right.
So that kind of builds that initial bond. Once you come in, then that's where you go into phase two, which
Mm-hmm.
is engaging with them.
Right.
So that comes in the form of content, activations, brand integrations, all that stuff. And then, of course, once you are deeply rooted within the community
Mm-hmm.
and integrated within the community,
Mm.
then you go towards your conversion, right?
Right.
That can be your offline, that can be your limited edition products, etc., etc. So
Wow.
there has to be a roadmap to
Mm.
how brands come in, and only then can they see the true benefits of working with the esports community.
Oh, I find that very
I think back,
interesting.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. I mean back then it's really small, right? Like esports was
Uh-huh.
quite small, but right now it's growing exponentially every year.
Yeah.
I think it's growing at a rate of 40% plus CAGR in Southeast Asia alone.
Mm-hmm.
So that audience is going to grow over time. So it's more about how you're going to position yourself to tap on this booming audience.
Right. For those who don't know, 40% CAGR means like 40% compound annual growth rate. It's like growing really rapidly versus other so many other industries. For example, some industries went up and then tanked, right? And then esports is just going up and up. I mean, back then when I first started, it's like wow, I see all the projections and all that. It's like very consistent. And now with the pandemic, COVID-19, kind of accelerates it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like how was
Uh,
the audience viewership during COVID-19 for EVOS?
So I think COVID-19 brought about two sides of the coin. So there
Oh,
are pros and there are cons.
hmm,
So on the pros, with everyone working from home and staying from home, essentially game usage, streaming, viewership, video content consumption has all skyrocketed tremendously. I think game companies' revenue have grown like by 30+% month over month.
mm-hmm,
Streaming has more than doubled. Content viewership has grown the same amount, 30% plus. So you're seeing a rise in the the fan base or audience base itself. So the community has definitely grown over this period. I think in the past, if you talk about esports, people talk about the huge. I mean, people talk about hardcore fans, but on the other side, they also talk about a huge chunk, which is the occasional fans, the occasional viewers.
right,
And I think what the pandemic has done is that a lot of these occasional fans, because there's no more sports, have started to taken a liking towards esports and started consuming more esports and gaming content. So that's probably a interesting catalyst for ourselves moving forward into the future.
right,
Obviously, on the con side,
mm-hmm,
um, with the pandemic happening, a lot of events are not happening right now.
mm-hmm,
So the offline events, that's definitely gonna take a beating.
right,
But that's where you kind of position and adapt your business to make it more digital focused.
right,
So we're doing more like online tournaments, online activations, and so on and so forth.
right. I mean, for those who don't know, also like EVOS, y'all like did some charity activations in line with the pandemic crisis, right? Y'all supported giving back to the less fortunate. Could you share more some of the activations that y'all
Yeah,
did?
so the vision that we set out for this company
Mm-hmm.
is to turn dreams into reality and inspire the next generation.
Okay.
And during times like this, I feel that as as a CEO, as a founder, and as a person or human of society,
Mm-hmm.
when everyone needs help the most, that's where you need to help.
Right.
And by doing so and showing people the act of doing good and also activating our fans to do good together with us, that's also in line with our vision of spreading um, the charitable and kindness mindset
Mm.
towards the young audience of today.
Right.
So we have done charity activations in Indonesia, when we donate food.
Mm-hmm.
And the same in Thailand when we're donating masks and food to the less fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing for in Vietnam and Malaysia.
Right. Some of the players in Thailand they even cook, right? They cook food
Yeah,
or
so
something.
so what we did was we had a food donation drive where we work with a lot of street vendors,
Oh,
food
okay.
vendors on the street. So as you know, the pandemic hit them quite hard as well, and
Right.
with less traffic, business was
Mhm.
hit, jobs dropped, so a lot of people in the slums couldn't really afford food anymore. They no longer had income, so we had an idea of like since our player was a chef previously,
Oh, okay.
supporting the local market, buying food, working with the local street vendors to buy food from them and
Mhm.
distribute it to the less fortunate in the slum regions of Thailand.
Wow. Somehow, I mean, it's they need to take care of their health and also their safety, and they're willing to go all out. The community, the esports community.
Yeah, and I think the campaign started when I chanced upon the news in Thailand
Oh, okay.
where they were no longer worried about the pandemic. So
Right.
Thailand was one of the first few countries that responded quite well to the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
but the aftermath of the pandemic was a rising cause for concern.
Oh.
So as people lost their jobs and lost their income and their livelihood, the suicide rate in Thailand actually skyrocketed.
Oh, the suicide rates went
People,
up.
yeah, so
Right.
people could no longer afford food. They can't pay for their rent. They can't afford electricity,
Oh no.
and
Yeah.
as um, for me, we just couldn't sit back and stop. Right,
Right.
we wanted to see
Mm-hmm.
what we can do for society.
Right.
No matter how small it is,
Right.
I just wanted to be a part of the help that these people can receive.
Right. Thanks for sharing. I mean, just now we talk about brands, talk about CSR initiatives, they all give back to communities through charities. How about for those who want to venture into esports? Nowadays everyone say, "Oh, Alan," like, they tell me like, "I want to do esports team." I'm like, okay, they only see the good part, whatever is on Google News, for example. And even this for brands, if they want to form an esports team, for example, right? I mean, I've been through that path before, so I roughly know the pitfalls, and it's not so easy as it looks like. Can you share like some do's and don'ts for those who want to start an esports team tomorrow, after watching
So
this podcast?
yeah, so I think the key word here is passion.
Passion.
So we need to separate passion from interest.
Oh, okay.
So when you're interested in something,
Hmm.
yeah, you'll probably do it. But interest generally dies when you hit obstacles and roadblocks.
Right. Okay.
Whereas if you have a passion,
Uh-huh.
and even better, if you have a purpose,
A purpose. Right. Yeah, I
when you
think
hit a roadblock, yeah,
sorry, that is lead up to the next question about purpose. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Ivan went through a situation back then at August 2017, if not mistaken. Mistaken.
yeah,
Okay, can you share more about it? It's actually very personal. Not many people know about it, but he already shared publicly on his LinkedIn, right, Ivan? So I can ask
yeah.
him. It's
Okay.
out in public. But for those who don't know, I feel personally when I first read it, Ivan doesn't know I'm sharing this part. When I read it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know this about Ivan. I found out through his LinkedIn article, even though I met Ivan a few times before that, and it's in a way quite shocking and inspiring at the same time. And for those of you tuning in, I would like Ivan to share his personal journey on this. I believe it's going to inspire the next generation for sure, just like what EVOS motto is, turning dreams to reality, inspiring the next generation. Yeah, Ivan, can you share more about that situation
Yeah.
back then?
I think since I started my
Hmm.
work career, I always dreamed of building a business that can directly impact the lives of the people in society. And that was something I couldn't do when I was doing my investment side.
Hmm.
That's why I transitioned more towards the entrepreneurship side. So I think EVOS was one of the was one of the companies that when I started,
Mm-hmm.
I could directly see the impact that I have on the players that I hired, the staff that I hired. You know, essentially, I'm giving them an opportunity to work in an industry that they actually enjoy being a part of.
Right.
I believe that, you know, I believe in a world where, um, if everyone is pursuing a career
Mm-hmm.
in an industry that they have a very high passion for, I think the world will be a lot more happier place.
Right.
So I guess for me, as I said just now, it started as a hobby.
Right.
Um, And the start, I kind of knew that it was gonna be big, but I was kind of
Mm.
like half, like,
Okay.
should I go all in or should I not? I
Right.
want to go all in, but I have so many things in the back. But I guess it was only in 2017 August where,
Mm-hmm.
back then I started to get some issues with walking, and my physical mobility was an issue. So I went to the doctor.
Okay. Oh, you went doctor.
Yeah, I went to the doctor,
Okay.
got myself checked.
All
Thought
right.
it was like some spine injury.
Oh,
But
wow.
when they did a genetic test, they found out that I was diagnosed, or I was born with Kennedy disease.
Kennedy disease.
So
What's that?
essentially, it's something like ALS, whereby
Mm-hmm.
over time your muscles and your limbs, your body and your face and your throat kind of deteriorates over time. Lah.
Oh.
So I think back then, and the doctor kind of told me that, as you know, doctors always like to give you the gravest situation,
Oh,
scenarios,
okay.
right? So they told me, you might not be able to walk or talk or even
Mm-hmm.
eat.
Right.
Eventually,
Oh no.
maybe in 5 years' time.
Right.
So I guess that kind of took me by surprise.
Right.
When you are young, you're an entrepreneur, you always
Uh-huh.
think super far ahead. It's like, oh, it's okay, I got time.
Yeah.
But when a doctor comes up and say, oh, maybe 5 years, then
Uh-huh.
it kind of hits you hard, right?
Right.
So like, when I was doing my career, I had this like, I know, kind of eccentric, but I had this counter. It's
Oh.
called how many days do you have left? And then
Wow.
I put it as 87 years. I'll die at 87 years old, so I was counting the days.
Oh, okay.
And then the moment the doctor told me that, and then it's like changing it. It's like, okay, not much left. 5 years is not many days left.
Yeah.
So I was kind of a wake up call, right?
Right.
And I was kind of at my one of my lowest point in my life.
Oh.
Kind of want to give up,
Oh, okay.
but the only joy I had
Mm-hmm.
back then was, watching my team compete, watching my players play, watching people cheer for the EVOS brand, and I had this epiphany that maybe that's a calling.
A calling.
Maybe
Wow.
that's a sign for me to work on it full time because 5 years, nothing left to lose, right?
Right. I mean, like, I
So
mean, this is very personal and very deep question for Ivan. I mean, he's personally going through it, right? And Ivan, for you, right? A lot of people in your situation, I mean, if they read what you're going through, they might say like, I'm going to travel around the world, visit all the countries, for example. But wow, you put in all your effort, your time, into this esports industry. It's a big deal for anyone, and I personally felt it like, wow, okay, yeah. So man, it's a big sacrifice that you're doing, not just for the industry but also for yourself. So hats off to
yeah,
you, Ivan, for putting in all this effort. If you have one message for those tuning in who might be facing a similar situation like yours or in different forms or different ways, what message you have for them?
well, I think end of the day, you have a choice. You know, there are multiple ways to look at a good or bad situation. So on one side, for me,
Mm-hmm.
if I chose to look at it in a negative lens,
Right.
then yeah, for sure, retire, travel the world, or whatever have you. But it's my choice to decide that, hey, 5 years is still a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
I can build an empire in 5 years. I can
Mm-hmm.
inspire many generations to come in 5 years. I can impact the lives of many within 5 years.
Right.
And that's the mindset that I choose to believe in. And that's why, in a way, I feel like it's an obligation to do what I do right now.
Wow. I think that's very deep. Personally, I myself have researched around the world about esports, the co-founders behind it, their stories, and yours is one of the, I mean, compelling one. I'm sure you get that a lot, right? People, once you share with them your situation, people like, what? Whoa,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
get that
you're
a
lucky to
lot?
hear it. Lah.
Sorry?
I mean, I rarely talk about it.
Right,
So
right, right. Hey, you
only if it
posted on your
comes up.
LinkedIn lah.
Yeah, but no one reads it.
No one reads
Lah.
it. Okay, I have to share it. I mean, seriously, Ivan, I met you a few times before reading that LinkedIn article, And when I read it, it kind of like boom, it hit me hard, like boom, hit me on the head, like they could have been anyone, and you chose to still go down this path into esports. I find it very rare in the industry per se lah, or even whichever industry. It's like a like say epiphany moment, like and sometimes I ask myself, what if that could happen to me or anyone else? What would you have done in your shoes? So really, hats off to you and respect you for that lah. In that sense, I mean, I would have said it either way. Well, I read that article. So yeah, I think that's about all the time we have. We don't want to drag our viewers too much also, and try to keep it short and sweet for those who are watching in. Is there any last words for brands who have not get involved in esports? What's your message for them?
Don't make the wrong mistake by finding the wrong partner. Find the
Okay.
right partner in EVOS.
Okay. Totally understand. Okay? I got an interesting question. Also, I just want
Yeah.
to extend a bit. Like what what do brands get wrong that you've seen?
So I think the main thing is they see esports as sports.
They see esports as sports. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean sports, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the way you advertise is basically like the TV era, right? You sponsor the sports, you get on TV,
Mm-hmm.
you're paying that TV premium.
Right.
So the ads and the IP and everything.
Okay.
For esports, it's more digital. It's more, live streaming. It's more personal, and the brand is more in touch with the fans, right?
Right.
Like, how often do you see content of your favorite football team or NBA team? It's not as often as compared to
Mm.
esports team. Like esports teams are on every single social media and doing content every single day.
Right.
So chances are you're seeing esports content more often than your traditional sports content. So I guess that's one of the plus point in working in esports.
Uh-huh.
The distribution and accessibility to how often your content gets seen, it's a plus point.
Right. How often your content gets seen? Right. It's like share of voice kind of thing,
Yeah.
exposure, etc.
And I think the main thing is that the average age for esports is basically the millennials and Gen Zs.
Uh-huh.
So your 18 to 24-year-old range, most of it is around there.
Right.
Whereas for traditional sports, I mean, you have baseball, which is average age of like, I think it was like 40 or 50. And then I think soccer and everything else is also relatively higher. So I think esports stands out by allowing brands to target um, the youth of the next generation.
Wow. And sorry, one last question. And uh, a, this not a big thing that many people know about, but actually, EVOS Esports partnered with TikTok recently. It's a big deal. Not many esports team around the world have done it yet. I've been like googling all the news every day, right? Can you share more about that? Just like a quick one, and wow, that's quite interesting news for the industry.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about content distribution,
Mm-hmm.
then you kind of break it down into the types of content formats. So you have Instagram stories where you have Instagram where you have your stories, 6 seconds kind of short clips.
Mm-hmm.
You have the IG posts, your standardized posters. Facebook similar. YouTube for video content, but you don't really have any that has short form video content
Right.
with music involved. So TikTok is one of the few platforms that kind of stands out for us, whereby we are able to create short form, interesting and viral content with interesting music to overlay on top of it.
Right.
And in addition to that, when a platform is new, organic distribution is also very high.
Right.
Like back then, the reason why we grew so fast was because we tapped onto the organic reach of Facebook in the early days to Instagram stories,
Uh-huh.
IGTV, YouTube, and then TikTok. So we are always first movers for new platforms and make sure that we kind of build our digital real estate early and grow together with the platform.
Right. I mean, yeah, yeah. I've seen some esport event organizers start using TikTok, and Evo is one of the few teams around the world that has embraced it, lah. So I myself used to come from a brand side, so I know that people need to get involved in that realm, if I may say, right? I mean, I myself started playing TikTok a few months back, right? People thought, oh, this Alan crazy. Why is he
Yeah,
playing with a kids thing? You know, people telling me, ah, Alan, this for kids, but they don't know. Hey, ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, made like billions, right?
so much money.
On
Yeah.
a kids thing, right?
And I think the interesting thing is, if you look at for esports team in Southeast Asia, if you look
Mm-hmm,
at Facebook and Instagram and YouTube,
mm-hmm.
the gender demographic mix is always 80-20 or 90-10 in favor of
Oh,
male.
oh wow,
TikTok is the only platform whereby the mix is slightly more balanced, whereby you're getting 60-40 or 70-30 kind of mix. So more females involved.
mm,
So we see TikTok as one of the few enablers for
mm-hmm.
to diversify the demographic away from just the male dominant audience base to more female dominant
Right, right.
audience
You
base.
always get comments, from brands or even people in general. Oh, esports is male dominated per se lah.
Yeah,
And what you say makes sense now. TikTok has a majority of a female base, and you can actually expose the brand and even EVOS to these different demographics.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
So like one last thing for those who are not aware about what is esports and you're tuning in for the first time, right? Um, Back then, when I share with people about esports and reaching the hard to reach demographics, many people don't know that the next generation actually are not reading newspapers. No offense to the newspaper media out there, and do brands actually see that? They understand that, or some only
I
right now?
I think all brands understand that,
Mm,
but it's more about how do you actually bring your brand inside the platforms that young people are in. Because I mean, to be honest, it's not as easy as it looks, right? Like for TV, for radio, it's quite standardized.
right.
Whereby, okay, you make a commercial, you buy your ad slot, you put it in. But for streaming, for YouTube or social media, it's slightly harder to kind of also gauge the value and to integrate within those platforms itself. So it takes time, and it's
Mm-hmm.
also on the platform side, right?
Right,
Building a product that's more advertiser friendly.
right,
So I think Facebook did it quite well. So Facebook ads is
mm-hmm.
wonderful. Instagram launched their ad service, I think 2 years ago,
Right,
and TikTok is only right now starting
mm,
to launch their advertising service. So over the next couple of years, you see digital ads becoming more mainstream and brands seeing the value of being in digital advertising.
right. So like,
So,
one question for viewers from US or Europe, right? Do you like have any brand activations you saw that you feel like, wow, they did a great job in the US or Europe?
oh, for me,
Yeah, what do you think personally? Yeah, I mean, you observe the
let's
market
see.
performance and all that.
I can't really think of one off the
Uh-huh.
top of my mind, but I think the the biggest impact TikTok has is on the music industry,
Okay,
right? So I think back then, to if you're a musician or if you're a music label, to promote your music, either you try to get on Billboard Top 100, you ensure high CD sales, you pay iTunes to boost you,
right,
and that kind of stuff. But right now, essentially, you can craft a TikTok campaign to make your music go viral,
right,
and that's what's happening to a lot of the smaller independent musicians.
right,
So I would say TikTok, aside from it being a digital social media, it's also one of the few platforms that kind of um, disrupted the music industry. So now pretty much almost all music labels knows the power of TikTok
mm-hmm,
in boosting their music um, listen consumption.
mm-hmm,
So I think that's one of the main, I'll say the beginnings of TikTok advertising. In terms of brand advertising, I think right now it's still in like the Instagram early phases.
right,
So like influencers just do like brand placement,
yeah,
but TikTok right now is opening up their TikTok advertising platform. So, you know, a lot of brands are doing hashtag campaigns, challenge campaigns, and using influencers to amplify all these challenges. And so far, I think it's working quite well.
Right.
And we'll probably see more of it in the future.
Yeah, I think the TikTok crossover with esports is definitely happening like wildfire right now. Even like
Yeah.
music for sure. But like, how about for brand esports activations in the US, Europe? Do you have any favorite ones yourself?
Let's see.
Mm.
Uh, I like I think DHL. They did this
Ah, okay.
campaign with I think it was ESL.
Dota, right?
Yeah, Dota. So like yeah, same to our Gojek one lah. So they kind of turned the Korea into an actual DHL skin
Right.
and
Yeah,
made
yeah.
the whole content around it. I thought that was quite interesting, and the way they presented it was very tastefully done.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not like in your face kind of thing. It's like very integrated, right?
yeah, that's right. So I think that's one of the more integrated forms of advertising that I've seen lah.
Right. I mean, I've seen
Oh wait, oh, and also
ah,
Fortnite, right?
Fortnite. Which
So
one?
Fortnite, I think I like. I mean, I'm a big fan of
Mm-hmm.
virtual branded items, right?
Right.
So Fortnite collaboration with Samsung, and they created like the Galaxy skin to launch. I think the S9.
Uh
I
huh.
kind of liked it because
Oh, okay.
everyone wanted the skin,
Mm-hmm.
and as a result, people generally know of Samsung's new phone.
Right. Yeah, I think like in Europe, I think I saw McDonald's activation. They put on the banner, right?
Yeah,
Economy meal, and then it's like in relation to CS:GO, you know,
yeah. Eco
the
round.
yeah the first person shooter game, right? And then it's like which one is it? Echo round, and then
Round. Rush B for I don't know what.
yeah. So like, wow, that's really interesting. I haven't seen in my life people,
Yeah,
brands integrating into the esports world that way. And it's
yeah.
like you say, like the DHL one, very well integrated.
I think it's about first mover lah. So like,
Mm,
if you're the first one to do it, I mean, imagine if you're a CS:GO fan,
mm.
in your day-to-day life as you walk around, chances are you're never gonna see anything related to your game that you like. But suddenly you walk past McDonald's and like you go around, and then rush B, what? And then it kind of piques your interest, and then it's like, oh, you take a picture of it, sends it to your friend, hey guys, look, McDonald's is doing CS:GO memes. I think that's kind of exciting as well. Like from a fan perspective, when you
Hmm.
see it, it's a very exciting moment.
Yeah. And then now even like League of Legends, you can put your brand inside the banner, for example. So there are a lot of like integrations happening across the industry, and it's even in EVOS, right? You have your own skin inside Mobile Legends, right?
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah.
I think it's we're seeing the rise of digital assets,
Mm.
and that rise is also amplified by the pandemic. So right now, I mean, traditional offline advertising assets is kind of dropping in value. So if you look at like um, billboard ads or those kind of ads, it's kind of diminishing in the value. And because everyone is online right now, the value of owning digital real estate within the game or owning digital assets within the game is growing quite significantly.
Yeah.
So if you can become a mainstay in a game itself, it could be potentially a good opportunity.
Right. I saw some like stuff that EVOS is doing that I don't really see other esports team do. Like you have your own IPs for your EVOS Raw mascot, right? And all the GIFs on Instagram, on the AR augmented reality filters. I had hardly see any esports team do that, man. Could you share a quick
Yeah,
one about that?
yeah. So I think for us, we are always very fan centric.
Mm-hmm.
So we put ourselves. I mean, for us, like being the CEO of EVOS, essentially we are the number one fans of EVOS.
Right.
So how would I, on a day-to-day basis, interact with the EVOS brand? So we were just brainstorming and seeing things that we could potentially use within our daily life. So like GIFs, we use GIFs all the time to communicate and have fun. Stickers online and Telegram and everywhere, we use it a lot to kind of express our feelings. And stickers within the Instagram story itself, we use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that hey, why not just do it for ourselves and use our own stickers instead of someone else's sticker?
Right.
So I guess we saw it as another form of content and IP distribution.
Right.
And from there, we kind of expand, AR kind of came up, Instagram launched their whole AR toolkit for developers.
Mm-hmm.
And, when something is new, we try to take advantage of it.
Right.
So always being the first mover in new content formats to engage and enhance the experience of being an EVOS fans.
Right. I'm just actually
So,
going to search for hunt for some of these GIFs and stickers. I find it really interesting personally because not many esports team does it. And when I share stuff and I want to like, for example, tag EVOS and I notice like, oh wow, there's this interesting thing they do. And any reason why not many esports team does it? Or
so
you guys are more
the,
creative.
no, so the reason why the Western teams don't do it
Mm.
is because the esports teams over there are PC centric,
Ah,
right?
okay.
So you
Interesting.
don't really use stickers as often in your photos on PC, and you don't really take pictures using your PC. The
Right.
only time you use it is on your mobile phone. And the reason why we looked at it is because, as you guys know, in Southeast Asia, it's a mobile first economy. So
Right.
everyone, with the mobile penetration is like insanely high.
Right.
Almost everyone has a mobile phone, and everyone uses and communicates with the mobile phone. So the phone is part of the daily lives of most of our audience.
Right.
So, all these stickers and GIFs are things that you use within Instagram and Facebook so that, it's something that we thought, hey, why not make our own one so that our fans can use it while they are while they are doing their IG stories and stuff.
Oh, okay. So I'm on Instagram right now. This is actually real life, and I'm not sure you can see. So yeah, I find this really interesting. Right, it's on IG, and people, the fans can actually use EVO stickers. Yeah,
Yeah,
some of it, and even on you mentioned Line, the one of the chat apps, and also even on Telegram.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so like wow, that's really interesting because not many esports team per se even talk about it, and you guys like really going the extra mile to give back to your fans.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's on the fan side. On the business side,
Mm-hmm.
it's about IP distribution.
Right.
So, how often does your fan
Mm-hmm.
sees your brand? And we kind of dissected it, right? So what
Okay.
what apps do our fans use? WhatsApp, Line, uh, Telegram, Instagram, and how can we have our brand within the apps themselves? So stickers, GIFs, Jiffy, I
Mm-hmm.
think Jiffy is a neglected social media platform of sorts. So there are a lot of things that we kind of brainstorm to kind of look at ways to find an edge over our competitors to look
Right.
different and to feel different to our fans.
Like I'm looking on Telegram, right? You mentioned this, right? So this is on Telegram. Those of you can't see it. So I find it really interesting. Like, man, it's on Telegram. Yeah, so you can actually use it. I mean, it's big in Southeast Asia. People express themselves through emojis and also through stickers. And man,
Yeah.
so I think it's really cool. No, I don't really see many esports organizations or teams doing it. Yeah, guys, check it out, man. Are we gonna have a Ivan GIF?
Oh man, I
Got
don't
a.
think anyone would download
See,
that.
guys, interesting, right? So yeah, I find it really interesting. So yeah, one last thing. I say one last thing so many times. This is the last of the last lah. This is a special podcast series. I noticed that EVOS is also moving into like content space in terms of like short films. Could you share about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned to you just now, right? We're always very fan focused. So the thought process was, okay,
Mm,
what sort of content do our fans consume? And how do we create content to be part of their content consumption routine? So, I mean, obviously, we started with like the documentary stuff, player documentaries, team documentaries, behind the scene documentaries, and gradually we progressed towards more like mainstream documentaries. So, we actually made a sitcom.
oh,
So we kind of it's like it's a fictional sitcom. So we kind of copied like Big Bang Theory, but have an esports element to it. So instead of roommates, you have a gaming house with a
Mm-hmm.
team, and it's essentially the comedic life journey of how an EVOS team is.
Right.
So I think in the past few years, we kind of see all the funny moments within our own teams, and we thought that, hey, why not turn this into a comedy
Right.
and try to see how we can work something out. And we did, and
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, it turned out really interesting.
Right. Yeah, I saw on YouTube. And okay, to wrap it up, what is your prediction? Everyone likes to talk, right? 5 year or 10 years down the road, what's your personal prediction on the esports landscape?
Wow, making a prediction during a pandemic, that's really risky.
Yeah, I mean it's an open prediction. Disclaimer, won't hold you for it.
Yeah. Um, I think for sure at the baseline, the esports industry will grow. The
Mm-hmm.
question is more of how will it grow? How big will it become? So I think one thing we'll definitely see over the next few years is the rise of franchise leagues. Um, the more of a integration of esports into mainstream content and mainstream life. So you're already seeing that in the West and China, whereby you have esports slash lifestyle merchandise like Face Clan, 100 Thieves. You have esports drama like Kings Amata in China. You have esports malls coming up in China itself. And I think this is just the start of a trend whereby people are seeing the value of esports not as a business, but as an engagement and community tool to attract people to come to you.
Right.
And I think that's something that we'll see going forward. How do mainstream um, media assets or mainstream assets look at esports to drive either content consumption or foot traffic into their own assets? I think that's something that will be interesting to see.
Right. I think you're not too far off with, I mean, like the cloud and 5G coming in rapidly, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
makes sense. And yeah, thanks so much, Ivan, for your time. We exceeded the stipulated time. You know what? This is my first podcast ever, right? So I was playing like, okay lah, maybe 30 minutes or maximum 45 minutes. It's like I'm counting here 1 hour and close to 10 minutes. Like, oh my
okay, not
goodness.
bad lah for first podcast.
Yeah, trying to set out the technical stuff. Got some help even from Matthew. And shout out to guys for our first podcast. You got Scott and the rest, Eep, Daryl. Thanks everyone and for tuning in, and all the best to Ivan and also EVOS Esports and all your upcoming ventures in the esports
Yeah.
space.
And
And
if you're watching this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Alan Peng.
yeah, and also to of course EVOS TV on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the whole works. Check it out.
Bye
And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks, Ivan.
bye.
All
Thanks,
right, let me
guys.
stop recording now.